Had I known beforehand how much trouble there would be in the making of this custom model and how much luck I would need and someone who was willing to go the extra mile, I would probably never have started this. But this is the story of how this model came to be. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review Review. Today we'll take a closer look at an Airbus A320-200 of Austrian Airlines. At the front of the box we have a cutout so we can get a glimpse of the aircraft model inside, and then TWC Customs has modified the box as well with the Austrian branding. On the back side of the box he has then added a lovely image of the aircraft model inside, of course his branding, and we can truly say that this is a limited edition. I really like when custom model designers do not just modify the model for you, but also the box, because it just gives, this overall experience with the model, and that is quite nice. And here she is, the Airbus A320-200 in the new or current standard livery of Austrian Airlines. And you might say, why on earth would you need a custom model of that? But yeah, in Scale 500 we to date have not seen such a aircraft model realized. Incredibly enough, Herpa still refuses to do so, and when they give us an Austrian Airlines model, they add a sticker on it. So brilliant stuff. So we have to go down the custom model route, but this was quite the journey to get this model in the state that you're seeing it now, and it was only done because TWC Customs went the extra mile without complaining or anything. But I will tell you the full story in this video. But firstly, we just take a look at it as it is here in front of us, with the tail section where we have the Austrian Airlines branding. Then from this lovely red Austrian color scheme, we can move on to the fuselage, where we have the full registration code of the aircraft. We find the Austrian flag, the flag of the European Union. We find a little red marking around one of the cabin windows. That's something we find across the fuselage as well. A little bit of detailing in the cabin doors, although not as pronounced due to the lack of print quality with the decals used here. And then towards the very tail, we do have a little bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. At the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage, we then find the Austrian Airlines branding. We have some static ports. We find a little bit of detailing again in the cabin door. We have the Starlines logo, of which the airline is a member. And underneath the cockpit windows, we find a bit of writing and another static port. Unfortunately, really not as pronounced as I would have wished for, but this is really down to the lack of print quality on the decals, but I will get into this topic more later. The cockpit windows themselves, they are quite nice. Missing the window wipers, that would have been lovely. And above that, we then find the last two letters of the registration code. The engine nacelles have been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage. We don't have any safety markings here, but that's simply because there were no decals for that. But we do have the silver leading edge painted on very nicely by TWC Customs, so that's nice. The physical detailing of these engines is in line with what Herpa offered back in the day when they created this aircraft model. It used to be an Air Berlin, but more on that later in the video. On the fuselage, just above the wings, we have the emergency exits, and that leads us to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting off here with the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out. We have the markings for the emergency exits. Yes, the wings are grey. I will also get into that later in the video. Underneath, we find more nice physical detailing and the full registration code of the aircraft, and very nicely done here by TWC Custom. He has painted in the wingtip fences with the Austrian red, looking really nice and sharp. The landing gear, that is the standard landing gear for this generation of A320 family aircraft model from Herpa Wings. It is not the current generation. No big difference for the main landing gear, but a huge difference for the front landing gear, which looks much nicer on this aircraft model. So that's a relief. And we have a decal here with the printed details, so that's really lovely. On the belly of the aircraft we have the Austrian greeting, or German greeting, Servus, saying hello, and I do believe that TWC Custom has closed in the hole in the fuselage which the original model had for a stand. That of course was not included, but thereby saving the Austrian branding here on the belly. And on top of the fuselage we then find a hand-painted beacon light. And yes, I know some of you will say, oh, it's a bit too big, but keep in mind it is hand-painted and he has one chance of doing this. For me, I'm really happy that it is there. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments as decals added here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A320-200 in the new or current standard livery of Austrian Airlines, a custom model from TWC Customs using a Scale 500 donor model of Herpa. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Let's start by addressing the grey wings. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is really the new Austrian Airlines model that is being released by Herpa Wings, which does also have grey wings. However, that is of an A320neo, and that should have white wings because the new aircraft delivered to Austrian Airlines and within the Lufthansa group basically all have white wings. This A320ceo, however, does still have grey wings, so the donor model I found did have grey wings and therefore could be used for this aircraft model, this custom model. The only thing that this donor model does not have that the real aircraft that it is based upon has is a set dome. That is missing on this donor model, but I didn't care. I was happy just having the model as we see it here. So much for the white versus grey wing debate. Now moving on. The donor model used to be an Air A320 in the Fan Force 1 livery, so no big loss here. But crucially enough, this is basically what is known as an NG5 form. The current Herpa A320s is the NG6 form. The NG5 form has the advantage that it has the much nicer landing gear. If you go even further back, you will get even better landing gears before it then again turns really badly. But yeah, this is for me, a pretty acceptable landing gear, with the front landing gear especially, because it is just not oversized as much as what we see with current models. Now let's talk about the decals, and that is really what this whole story really is about. I have mentioned a few times in this review that some of the details aren't as pronounced due to the lack of quality. So why would I even choose these decals? I just did not know about the differences with decals. I think the paper itself is fine. It's just the print type or the print technique used, or the printer basically, well, that will give you different results. And whatever printer was used for these decals, it just doesn't give nearly as clear-cut prints as, for example, the decals you can get from Malefiska. Now, these are also normally decals that TWC Customs uses, so the ones from Malefiska, not the ones I gave him here. That so much is not really my issue. I mean, yes, there are printing differences, so that's that. The issue I had with the decals was that I bought these decals, I gave them to TWC Customs and asked him, can you please combine it with this aircraft model for me and make a nice custom model of it? And he was so very kind and said, yes, I will do that for you. The issue with the decals that I had, apart from that they are just not as nice as the ones that are coming directly from Malefiska, is the fact that there were many details missing. Like whole parts of the decals needed to make this aircraft model were missing. For example, the cockpit windows were completely missing. So if I had tried to attempt to make this aircraft model myself, I would have failed miserably because I would not be able to complete this aircraft model. TWC Customs stepped in here and sourced the missing parts from Malefiska without complaining, without charging me more for that. And that is for me really going the extra mile. Now today he's not taking a job like this again because he has also made experiences now with that and has said, okay, well, you know, this doesn't make sense. I will just source my decals from sources that I can trust, where I know that I get all the parts that I need. Makes sense. But I really wanted to highlight, and again, I want to stress out, this is not to name or shame anyone. This is really for me to stress out the extra mile that TWC Custom went on this aircraft model for me, and also Malefiska, who supplied all these missing parts. And you can actually see on the aircraft model where the decals are coming from Malefiska because they just look much sharper. So in the end, quite the journey to get to a stage where we have an actually usable aircraft model. Have you ever made experiences with decals? Maybe you have had something like me where parts were just missing. Let me know your stories in the comment section down below. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.